Welcome to the Geometry Lessons 2.3 to 2.5 Quiz Review Answer Key. So in questions 1 and 2, we're going to refer to the number line below. And in statement number 1, in problem number 1, we need to figure out if it's true or false. Is line segment AB congruent to line segment BC? Which would mean their distances are the same. So let's use the number line looking at a hole is cut into thirds on this number line. So we have 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3 would be 1. So every space is a third. So from A, there's -3 to B, which we need to figure out what it is. We need to use the thirds. So from -1, we have -1, -1 and 1/3, -1 and 2/3. So B is -1 and 2/3. So to find the distance between A and B, we would subtract those two values. And when you subtract -1 and 2/3 minus a -3, it equals 1 and 1/3. And to find the distance from B to C, we look at B, which is -1 and 2/3, and C, which is 0, and we subtract 0 minus -1 and 2/3, which ends up being a positive 1 and 2/3. You can see they're not the same distance, so the answer would be not congruent. It would be false. In problem number 2, again, we look at the number line, and we're looking for the midpoint between C to E in that line segment. And C is 0 and E is 2, so their distance is a 2. If you divide that in half, that's a 1. So if you go from 2 left 1, from C 0 right 1, you're right at 1. So 1 is the midpoint of line segment CE. And number 3, we're looking to see if this statement is true or false. If TU, that line segment, is congruent to RS, and line segment RS is congruent to DE, does TU have to be congruent to DE? Several ways you could do this. I like to draw a visual. So I'd put a little line segment, and I cut it into smaller line segments. So I have T to U, and I'm going to also include R to S and make them look the same because it says they are congruent. And I thought, well, if they're congruent, it means they have to have the same distance. So I just picked a number. My favorite number is 4. So I made them both 4. And it says also RS has to be congruent to DE. So I drew a line segment, a section of it from D to E. And if RS is congruent to DE, their distances are the same also. Does that mean TU has to be congruent to line segment DE? And you can see my picture proves that this is a true statement. So number 4, we know the definition of the midpoint is it will separate the segment into 2 equal parts. So if one side is 2x plus 12, the other side is 5x minus 12, we set up an equation, and then we solve that equation for the variable by using our algebra skills. I end up getting 24 equals 3x, divide by 3 on both sides, so x has to be 8. So just to double check that's right, I substitute it back in, and I see that that segment has to be 28 units. If I put an 8 on that side, it is also 28, so I know I'm right. In this section, we're using the coordinate plane for questions 5 to 9. Always remember, x coordinate is written first. So go to the x-axis and then go to the y-axis to find your coordinates. And for questions 10 to 12, we're going to apply the midpoint formula. So you take the coordinates of both points, starting with the x-coordinate, add them, divide by 2, do the same with the y-coordinates, and you end up with number 10 being a midpoint of 2, 5. And you follow the same process for number 11, adding the x-coordinates first, find that center, do the same with the y-coordinates, and your midpoint is at 6.5, 8.5. Same idea for number 12. With your final result, the x-coordinate would be a 2, and the y would be a -4 for the midpoint.